hello, and a very quiet welcome to you. I'm so glad you found a moment of peace here with Quiet Vitality. I often wonder, in these shared but solitary moments of listening, where in the world you might be, and what the hour feels like for you. Is it late evening, where the light has just faded into a deep indigo, or the middle of the night, where the silence feels like a soft blanket, or perhaps a slow, early morning, where the world is still whispering and hasn't yet begun to speak? Wherever you are, and whatever the time, I invite you to just settle in, to let the weight of the day settle away from your shoulders, and to allow your attention to drift gently inward, toward the quiet hum of your own existence. There is nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to do, but rest and listen. Because tonight, or today, we embark on a quiet, profound story. It's not a story of dramatic external events, but of the serene and intricate universe that resides within the very boundaries of your skin. It's the story of how your body, over the long and beautiful arc of your life, has learned, and is still learning, even now as you rest, to recognize what belongs within it. It's a tale of exquisite balance, of deep, earned familiarity, and of a slow, wise adaptation that guides you silently from your first breath to this present moment. It is, in essence, the story of how you became you, at the most fundamental, cellular level, a story of biological identity, written in the language of acceptance and discernment. Think of it, if you will, as listening to the autobiography of your own form. An autobiography written not in words on a page, but in the silent language of cells and chemical signals, of receptors and messengers, of quiet conversations happening in the dark of your tissues. It is a narrative of constant, gentle negotiation, a lifelong diplomacy between what is inherently self and what arrives from the vast world outside. It begins with a fundamental, beautiful question that your body has been answering since before you were aware. In a world teeming with infinite life, with potential friends and potential foes, with food and pollen and dust and a million unseen microorganisms, how does your body know what is you and what is other? How does it decide what to welcome with open arms, what to fight with fierce determination, what to quietly ignore, and what to seamlessly integrate into the very fabric of itself until it becomes part of the whole? This is the quiet, ongoing, miraculous work of biological recognition. And it's crucial to understand that this is not a rigid, unchanging set of rules written in stone at the moment of your birth. It is a living, breathing story of learning. A story where your body is both the curious student and the experienced teacher, constantly updating its internal reference books, refining its understanding based on a lifetime of gentle and sometimes not so gentle experiences. It is a process masterfully guided by the core principles of balance, familiarity, and adaptation, the very themes that form the heart of our conversations here at Quiet Vitality. To truly appreciate the depth, elegance, and sheer complexity of this story, we must start at the very foundation, with the silent, molecular gatekeepers that establish the very concept of self. From the moment you were conceived, the unique combination of your parents' DNA began constructing a biological identity that is yours alone. This isn't just your face in the mirror or your fingerprints on a surface. Those are the visible, macroscopic markers of self. Beneath that, on the surface of nearly every one of your trillions of cells, exists a molecular identification card, more precise than any government document. The most critical elements of this ID are structures called major histocompatibility complex molecules, or MHC for short. Imagine, if you can, each of your cells, the ones forming your skin, the ones in your liver filtering your blood, the neurons in your brain carrying thoughts, holding up a tiny, intricate, dynamic badge. This badge is not a static picture. It is a living display. It continuously presents small protein fragments, little samples of the proteins being manufactured inside that cell at any given moment. It's a way of the cell announcing, "Here I am. This is what I'm currently doing. I am a healthy, productive, and legitimate part of this cellular community. I belong." This system is the absolute, non-negotiable cornerstone of self-recognition. It is the primary database against which all other judgments are compared. Constant, vigilant patrols move through the lymphatic highways and tissue corridors of your body, checking these badges. These patrols are specialized white blood cells, the agents of your immune system. When they encounter a cell displaying the correct familiar badge, showing the normal, healthy proteins of your body, they simply give a molecular nod and move on. The cell is recognized. It is left in peace to do its vital work. This is the default, harmonious state for the vast majority of your cells, a state of accepted belonging, of being known. But consider what happens if a cell becomes infected by a virus. The virus, a tiny packet of foreign genetic material, hijacks the cell's internal machinery. It forces the cell to stop producing its usual proteins and instead start manufacturing viral proteins. Those foreign viral proteins end up being processed and displayed on the MHC badge alongside the cell's own samples. Now the badge shows something unfamiliar, something that does not belong to the self-library. The patrolling immune cell, with receptors fine-tuned to detect anomalies, recognizes this corruption immediately. The self-display has been compromised by an other. This triggers a swift and decisive response. The compromised cell is identified for what it has become: a threat hiding within the community, a factory for the enemy. It is signaled to initiate a self-destruct sequence called apoptosis, a graceful, programmed cellular suicide, or it is directly destroyed by the immune patrol. This sacrifice of the individual cell protects the integrity of the whole organism. This is the first, most elegant layer of recognition, a constant, cellular-level verification of identity and integrity, a biological security check happening millions of times a minute without you ever knowing. But who exactly are these patrols? This brings us to the vast and intricate system we collectively term immunity. In common thought, we tend to imagine it only as defense, as an army perpetually at war. But its first and most profound role is actually recognition, discernment. And like any sophisticated security system designed to protect a vast, ancient, and thriving city, it operates with two deeply integrated, cooperative layers: a rapid response team that works from general, instinctive guidelines, and a specialized intelligence unit that learns, remembers, and adapts. The rapid response team is your innate immune system. This is the ancient, foundational part of you, shared in its basic form with plants, insects, and all complex, multicellular life. It doesn't need to learn from individual experience. It is born knowing certain universal, repetitive patterns of danger. It recognizes general signs of trouble, specific molecular motifs that are simply never found in the healthy tissue of a human body, but are common hallmarks of many types of invaders. Scientists call these pathogen-associated molecular patterns, or PAMPs. Think of them as the rough, common uniform worn by many invading forces, a certain pattern on the bacterial cell wall, a distinctive shape in viral RNA, a signature molecule from a fungal spore. These are the initial sentinels, the first responders, cells with powerful names like macrophages, neutrophils, and dendritic cells. Macrophage literally means big eater. These cells drift through your tissues like quiet, vigilant custodians in a grand, living museum, constantly sampling their environment with delicate extensions. When they encounter something that shouldn't be there, perhaps a splinter that pierced the skin's barrier, a bacterium that found a tiny breach, or simply the natural worn-out debris from a dead cell, they don't need a specific, personalized ID to know it's out of place. They possess pattern recognition receptors that sense these generic danger signals. Their response is direct, physical, and primal. They extend parts of themselves, envelop the intruder or the debris, and engulf it, pulling it inside a little internal sac called a phagosome, where a burst of powerful enzymes and reactive chemicals breaks it down into harmless components. They are the ultimate recyclers and cleaners, tirelessly maintaining order. But they do not work in silence. As they act, they release a cocktail of chemical signals, proteins called cytokines and chemokines, into the surrounding tissue. These cytokines are the alarm bells, the rallying cries, and the architectural blueprints for the inflammatory response. They cause the classic, localized signs of inflammation: redness from increased blood flow, warmth from that blood, swelling from fluid, and cells leaking into the tissue, and sometimes pain from the pressure on nerves. It is vital to understand that this inflammation is not an error or a malfunction. It is a deliberate, calculated alert system. It's the body's way of declaring attention needed in this sector. The increased blood flow is a supply line, bringing more immune soldiers and healing factors to the site. The swelling helps to dilute any toxins and also creates a temporary physical barrier, slowing the spread of the problem. This innate system is immediate, generic, and crucial for survival. It's the first layer of knowing what is foreign and problematic, based on simple, hardwired patterns of recognition. An ancient wisdom written into your very cells. Yet life is infinitely complex, clever, and deceptive. Some sophisticated invaders have evolved ways to disguise their uniforms, to hide their PAMPs. Some threats are subtle, not triggering the blunt innate alarms. And most importantly of all, the human body is constantly, every second of every day, filled with things that are genetically foreign, but are absolutely, unequivocally not foes. The food you digest, the pollen in the air you breathe, the millions upon millions of commensal microbes that live peacefully on your skin, in your mouth, and throughout the entire length of your digestive tract. The innate system alone, with its broad, instinctive brushes, would cause chaos and self-destruction. It would attack everything unfamiliar, leading to constant, debilitating inflammation. It would reject the very nutrients and symbiotic partners you need to live. So, working in exquisite concert with it, you possess a second, dazzlingly sophisticated system, the adaptive immune system. This is where the true, lifelong story of learning, memory, and exquisite specificity unfolds. This system is not pre-programmed with specific knowledge of particular enemies. Instead, it is born with an almost infinite potential, a vast, randomly generated library of possible immune cells, each one genetically unique. Each of these cells, specifically the lymphocytes known as T cells and B cells, carries a unique receptor on its surface that can, by chance, recognize one specific random molecular shape known as an antigen. At the beginning of life, this library is untested, a collection of raw potential. It contains cells that could, in theory, recognize your own heart tissue, your own brain proteins, your own insulin, as foreign, a dangerous and potentially fatal prospect called autoimmunity. Therefore, one of the first and most critical lessons the body learns is a rigorous editing process called central tolerance. In the bone marrow, where B cells are born, and in a small, lobed organ called the thymus, located just behind your breastbone, where T cells mature, a kind of strict biological academy exists. In this academy, young, naive immune cells are presented with a comprehensive sample of your own self molecules, a grand display of all the protein badges that make up you. It's a full presentation of the familiar. Any young T cell or B cell that reacts too strongly to these self-samples, that binds to them with intense enthusiasm, as if they were a dangerous invader, receives a powerful signal to undergo apoptosis, programmed cell death. It is quietly, efficiently, and permanently deleted. This is a profound, necessary editing process. It ensures that the immune cells finally released from the thymus and bone marrow into your body's general circulation have passed a fundamental exam. They are indifferent to, or at most mildly reactive against, what is you. They have learned, through this negative selection, a baseline of familiarity. They have been taught what to ignore, what is home. This is the foundational bedrock of self-tolerance, and its proper function is essential for a peaceful life within one's own body. But the real, practical, lifelong education happens out in the vibrant tissues over decades of exposure to the real world. When the innate system is activated, when those macrophage custodians are cleaning up an invader, they don't just dispose of the trash. They transform into teachers, or what immunologists call antigen-presenting cells. After engulfing and breaking down a bacterium or virus, the macrophage travels. It journeys through the clear, slow-moving river of lymphatic fluid, which runs parallel to your bloodstream, heading toward a bean-shaped structure known as a lymph node. Lymph nodes are the bustling meeting halls, the diplomatic centers and intelligence headquarters of the immune system, clustered in your neck, armpits, groin, and abdomen. Here, the macrophage does something remarkable. It takes a representative fragment of the broken-down invader, an antigen, and places it on its own MHC display badge. It then presents this captured mugshot to the vast crowds of adaptive immune cells, the T cells, that are constantly circulating through the lymph node, waiting for their match. It asks, in the silent language of biochemistry, does anyone recognize this particular shape? The T cells, with their incredibly diverse, randomly generated receptors are scanned. By pure statistical chance, a very few T cells, perhaps just 1 in a million, will have a receptor that fits a piece of that presented antigen, like a key fitting a very specific, unique lock. This is the pivotal moment of specific recognition, the eureka moment of the adaptive immune system. That one T cell, once dormant and naive, is now powerfully activated. It binds tightly to the teaching macrophage and receives a cascade of co-stimulatory signals. This triggers it to begin proliferating at an astonishing, exponential rate, dividing again and again over several days, creating an army of thousands of clones, all genetically identical and all perfectly tuned to that exact same foreign shape. This clone army then differentiates into specialized units. Some cells become cytotoxic T cells, killer T cells, soldiers that travel to the site of infection and directly identify and destroy infected body cells by inducing apoptosis. Others become helper T cells, the strategic commanders that release cytokines to direct and amplify the entire immune response, including activating the other wing of adaptive immunity, the B cells. The B cell side of the story is equally elegant and complementary. B cells can recognize antigens directly in their native, three-dimensional shape, without always needing a macrophage teacher to present processed fragments. When a B cell's surface receptor, which will later become an antibody, binds to its matching antigen, it internalizes the whole complex, breaks it down, and also displays a piece on its MHC badge. A helper T cell, already activated to the same antigen, can then bind to this B cell. This connection is a crucial confirmation of threat. It gives the B cell the final, verified go-ahead. It too begins to clone itself massively. Most of these clones become plasma cells, which are essentially miniature, dedicated factories. Their sole purpose is to produce and secrete enormous quantities of antibodies, which are soluble, Y-shaped versions of the B cell's receptor. These antibodies flood into the bloodstream and tissue fluids. They latch onto the specific antigen wherever it is found, marking the invader for destruction by other immune cells, a process called opsonization, directly neutralizing viruses by blocking their entry into cells or clumping pathogens together for easier cleanup. But the most important long-term clones are the memory B cells and memory T cells. This is the absolute cornerstone of immunological learning. These memory cells are created in large numbers during the primary response. They do not actively fight in the current battle. They are living archives, biological flashcards. They persist in your body for years, often for decades, holding the precise genetic and receptor blueprint of that encounter. They are a cellular memory, a record of experience. The next time the same invader appears, even years later, these memory cells allow for a secondary response that is dramatically faster, stronger, and more precise. This is immunological memory. This is why you typically get diseases like chickenpox or measles only once in your life. This, of course, is also the foundational principle behind vaccination. A gentle, controlled, and safe introduction of a teacher, a weakened, killed, or partial version of a pathogen, or even just a piece of it, to stimulate the creation of these memory cells without causing the full-blown disease. The body learns to recognize a potential threat in a safe, controlled classroom environment and files that knowledge away for future use. It is a quiet, profound accumulation of wisdom, a biological memory of past encounters that shapes your resilience for years to come, a testament to the body's capacity to learn and adapt. Now, this incredible, learning-based defense system extends far beyond the realm of germs and viruses. It extends to the most profound, intimate, and overlooked partnership in your body, the one with the trillions of microbes that call you home. This is the unseen community, the microbiome. For most of human history, this vast internal ecosystem was invisible to us, a silent, unknown dimension of our own biology. We are only now, in recent decades, beginning to appreciate that you are not a single organism, but a walking, breathing superorganism, a collective, a holobiont. Your gut, your skin, your mouth, your respiratory tract are teeming with bacteria, viruses, fungi, and archaea. And this is not an invasion, a contamination, or a sign of dirtiness. This is a symbiotic partnership forged over millions of years of co-evolution, a delicate and essential dance. From the moment you passed through the birth canal and were coated in your mother's vaginal microbiota, took your first breath of air, teeming with environmental microbes, and had your first taste of milk containing prebiotics and bacteria, you began actively acquiring these microbial partners. They came from your mother, from the environment, from food, from every gentle touch, from the very world you explored with your hands and mouth as an infant. This microbial community, or microbiota, and their collective genes, the microbiome, is now considered by scientists to be a vital, supporting organ, as crucial to your development and health as your liver or your brain. This presents the immune system with its greatest, most delicate, and most ongoing learning challenge. Here are trillions of living, metabolically active, foreign organisms with DNA entirely different from your own, taking up permanent residence on your barrier surfaces, and, in the case of the gut, inside a tube that is technically an external space running through you. They are unequivocally other from a strict genetic standpoint. Yet, a full-scale, aggressive immune attack against them would be catastrophic, like burning down your own house to get rid of the guests. They are essential to your health in myriad ways. They help you digest complex carbohydrates and dietary fibers that your own human enzymes cannot break down, fermenting them to produce short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, which is the primary fuel for the cells lining your colon and has potent anti-inflammatory properties. They produce and synthesize essential vitamins like B12, K, and folate. They train and educate your immune system, as we shall see in detail. They protect against pathogenic invaders by physically occupying the prime real estate, consuming the available nutrients, and secreting their own antimicrobial substances, a principle called competitive exclusion. They even communicate with your brain via the gut-brain axis, a dense network of neural, hormonal, and immune pathways influencing mood, stress response, anxiety levels, and even cognition. So, the monumental question is, how does the body learn to recognize these countless microbes not as foes to be eradicated, but as essential neighbors, as part of the extended self, as a vital internal ecology? This education is constant, delicate, and takes place primarily at the largest and most important barrier surface, the sophisticated, dynamic lining of your intestines. Picture the gut lining not as a solid, impervious wall, but as a highly selective, living border, more like a sophisticated, intelligent customs and immigration checkpoint in a vast, peaceful, and prosperous nation. It is a single, fragile layer of epithelial cells, sealed together at the top with protein structures aptly named tight junctions. This layer is incredibly thin, often just one cell thick. On one side is the bustling, diverse, and sometimes chaotic microbial metropolis of the gut lumen, a dark, oxygen-poor, and crowded world. On the other side is the sterile, carefully regulated, and pristine internal environment of your body, the bloodstream and tissues that must be kept free of uncontrolled microbial traffic. Maintaining this border with precision is a monumental task of discernment. It is patrolled heavily by immune cells, but with a very different mission statement than in the bloodstream. Here, the goal is not primarily aggressive defense, but communication, tolerance, sampling, and controlled regulation. Specialized cells in the gut lining play distinct, cooperative roles. Goblet cells, shaped like little wine glasses, secrete a thick, gel-like protective mucus, primarily composed of mucin proteins. This forms two distinct layers: a loose outer layer, where many commensal microbes happily reside and feed, and a dense, sticky, sterile inner layer that adheres tightly to the epithelial cells, protecting them from direct contact with the microbial horde. Within the epithelial layer itself are Paneth cells, sentinels located at the base of the small intestinal crypts. They secrete a potent brew of antimicrobial peptides, natural antibiotics like defensins and lysozyme, that help keep the microbial population in check, selectively targeting troublemakers or overproliferating species while sparing the beneficial, established residents. And then there are the remarkable M cells, microfold cells. These specialized cells, located over organized lymphoid tissues called Peyer's patches, which are like immune system listening posts or diplomatic embassies embedded in the gut wall, act as intelligent samplers. They don't have a thick, protective mucus covering. Instead, they have folds and pockets that actively reach out and grab tiny, harmless pieces of bacteria and other antigens from the gut lumen, and literally transport them through the cell in vesicles, intact, to the other side. This is like a trusted customs officer taking a small, non-threatening sample of a regular merchant's goods for inspection and identification. They present these samples to a waiting crowd of dedicated immune cells, primarily dendritic cells and macrophages, stationed in a contained, organized area beneath the epithelium called the lamina propria. This contained space is the critical classroom for microbial tolerance. The dendritic cells, the professional antigen-presenting cells of the immune system, examine these microbial samples with exquisite care. If the samples belong to a long-term, beneficial, familiar microbial resident, a bifidobacterium or a Faecalibacterium prausnitzii, for instance, the educated dendritic cell does not sound a general inflammatory alarm. Instead, it often travels to a nearby mesenteric lymph node and promotes the development and expansion of regulatory T cells, often called Tregs. Tregs are the peacekeepers, the diplomats, the suppressors of the immune system. They release powerful anti-inflammatory signals like interleukin-10 and TGF-beta, which essentially broadcast a message to the surrounding immune cells. This is a friend. Stand down. Maintain tolerance. Do not attack. Another key response is the stimulation of B cells to produce a special type of antibody called secretory IgA, SIGA. Unlike the IgG antibodies that circulate in your blood to fight systemic infection, SIGA is dimeric, two antibodies linked together, and is actively transported and secreted directly onto the mucosal surfaces of the gut, respiratory tract, and elsewhere. It doesn't necessarily kill bacteria. Instead, it binds to them, coating them in a way that prevents them from adhering too closely to the epithelial cells and penetrating the barrier. It facilitates their removal in the mucus flow. It forms a peaceful, non-inflammatory containment layer, a sort of immune exclusion zone. It's a way of saying, you are welcome to live and work here, but please stay in your designated zone, in the lumen. Do not attempt to cross the border. This is learned tolerance in brilliant, dynamic action. This process is not a one-time lesson. It is dynamic and requires constant, gentle re-exposure and reassessment. The microbiome itself is not a static monument. It is a fluid, ever-shifting community that changes with your diet. More fiber, more sugar, your age, infant, adult, senior, your environment, urban, rural, your stress levels, and your medications, especially broad-spectrum antibiotics. The immune system must therefore continually reassess, adapt, and relearn who its current allies are. When this lifelong education goes well, a state of mutualistic homeostasis is achieved. The microbes thrive in their nutrient-rich environment, aiding in digestion, protection, and vitamin production. The immune system is calmly vigilant, but not inflamed, educated, and precise in its responses. The gut barrier remains strong, selective, and intact, allowing nutrients in while keeping pathogens and excessive inflammation out. This harmonious balance is a learned state, a quiet, negotiated agreement forged over a lifetime of coexistence and constant dialogue. It's the ultimate example of how the body learns to recognize what belongs, not by rigid genetic identity, but by functional contribution to the health and stability of the whole. These microbes, though genetically foreign, become integrated into the functional definition of self. They become familiar. They become part of the team. They are, in a very real metabolic and immunological sense, yours. This profound learning extends beyond the gut to every barrier surface that interfaces with the world. Your skin microbiome is a similar, though less dense, community. Harmless bacteria, like Staphylococcus epidermidis and Cutibacterium acnes, live in your hair follicles and on the surface. They outcompete potential pathogens, like its more dangerous cousin, Staphylococcus aureus, for space and resources, a classic example of competitive exclusion. They also ferment the sebum and oils on your skin, producing acids that help maintain a protective, slightly acidic pH, which inhibits the growth of many harmful species. They communicate with your skin's resident immune cells, Langerhans cells, and others, helping to calibrate their responses, teaching them what level of alert is normal for this exposed frontier. When you repeatedly use harsh antibacterial soaps or hand sanitizers that indiscriminately strip away this community, you're not just cleaning, you're disrupting a carefully learned ecological and immunological balance. You're removing the familiar neighbors that help your skin's immune system define the baseline of normalcy. The result can sometimes be dryness, irritation, eczema, or an overreaction to minor stimuli. The immune system, lacking its familiar calibrators, becomes jumpy and prone to false alarms. The body's recognition system relies profoundly on that constant, gentle presence to define the baseline of home. It learns what home is by who is always there, by the familiar chemical conversations that maintain peace. This core concept of a baseline, of a familiar, expected state, is absolutely central to understanding how the body knows what belongs. It's not a fixed list downloaded at birth, but a dynamic equilibrium, a feeling of normal that's actively maintained through billions of constant feedback loops. Think of it as the body's internal somatic sense of home. Home has a certain temperature, a certain rhythm of day and night, a certain set of sounds, smells, and textures. When something disrupts that expected pattern, a sudden draft, an unfamiliar noise in the night, a strange smell, your conscious awareness is immediately, involuntarily drawn to it. Your body operates on a similar principle at a molecular and systemic level, but with far greater complexity. The scientific term is homeostasis, the active, energy-requiring maintenance of a stable internal environment, despite constant changes in the external world. This includes maintaining the right pH, slightly alkaline, in your blood, the right concentration of sodium, potassium, and calcium ions, the right core temperature of approximately 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, 37 degrees Celsius, the right balance of hormones like insulin and cortisol, the right blood pressure, and the right levels of oxygen and glucose. Maintaining this is not a passive state of rest. It is an active, learned process of dynamic adjustment, a symphony of recognition and response conducted by your nervous and endocrine systems. Your kidneys are master homeostats, arguably the finest in the body. They learn, through evolutionary programming and continuous feedback, to recognize when to retain water and when to excrete it based on a cascade of complex signals about blood pressure, blood volume, salt concentration, and the hormone aldosterone. Specialized cells in the kidney tubules recognize the hormone aldosterone, which whispers, "Conserve sodium and water," and antidiuretic hormone, ADH or vasopressin, which urges, "Conserve water now." They recognize the physiological need and adjust their function accordingly, fine-tuning the composition of your urine drop by drop. Your pancreas contains clusters of cells called the islets of Langerhans. The beta cells within them are exquisitely sensitive chemoreceptors, recognizing the precise concentration of glucose molecules in the blood that bathes them. They recognize rising blood sugar after a carbohydrate-rich meal, and in response, synthesize and release the peptide hormone insulin. Insulin is a molecular key. It travels through your bloodstream and binds to specific insulin receptors on the surface of muscle, fat, and liver cells. Those cells recognize the insulin key. This recognition triggers a cascade of signals inside the cell that causes vesicles containing glucose transporter proteins, GLUT4, to merge with the cell membrane, opening molecular doors that allow glucose to flow in from the blood to be used for immediate energy or stored as glycogen or fat. This is a deep, ancient, metabolic familiarity, a recognition event honed over eons of evolution and refined by your personal lifetime of dietary habits and activity levels. When this recognition fails over time, as in the common development of type 2 diabetes, the cells stop responding properly to the insulin key, a state called insulin resistance. The familiar signal is no longer recognized correctly. The doors don't open fully, glucose piles up in the blood, and the delicate balance is lost. It is, at its root, a breakdown in a critical cellular recognition system. When you eat a meal, you are performing a radical act, introducing a massive amount of foreign biological material into the heart of your own body. Proteins from plants and animals, complex carbohydrates, fats. None of these large molecules are inherently you. Yet, your digestive system has learned, through its complex, layered structure and its suite of specific enzymes, to recognize them not as threats, but as essential, welcome resources. It breaks them down mechanically through chewing and churning, and chemically through acids and enzymes like pepsin, amylase, and lipase into their fundamental, universal building blocks. Amino acids from proteins, simple sugars like glucose and fructose from carbohydrates, fatty acids, and glycerol from fats. These small molecules are generic enough, universal enough to life, to be safely absorbed through the gut lining via specific transporters and recognized by your body's cells as fuel and building material. Your cells then reassemble these amino acids in a specific order dictated by your DNA into the unique human proteins that make up your muscles, your enzymes, your antibodies, your hair. They reassemble the fats into the phospholipid bilayers of your cell membranes and into signaling molecules, like hormones. This is a daily, peaceful, miraculous assimilation of the outside world into the substance of the self. The immune system, particularly the sophisticated gut-associated lymphoid tissue, must learn to tolerate this entire process. It must not mount an inflammatory response to the myriad food antigens passing through. For most people, it learns this tolerance perfectly through the mechanisms of oral tolerance, a process involving Treg cells and other suppressive mechanisms that are triggered by repeated, non-threatening exposure to food proteins in the gut. In conditions like celiac disease or food allergies, that learning process has gone awry. In celiac disease, the immune system mistakenly recognizes a component of gluten, gliadin, as a dangerous invader, launching a T-cell-mediated attack that damages the intestinal villi. In a peanut or shellfish allergy, a specific food protein is misidentified as a toxin, triggering a rapid, IgE-mediated allergic response. These are cases of profound mistaken identity, critical learning errors, where something harmless and nutritious is filed in the brain's immune database under the wrong, dangerous category, not as a welcome guest, but as a lethal foe. The subsequent immune reaction is violent, inappropriate, and can be life-threatening, all stemming from a fundamental failure of correct recognition and tolerance. This brings us to a crucial, overarching point in our story: the curriculum of a lifetime. The body's learning is profoundly, inextricably shaped by exposure, by experience. The hygiene hypothesis, though an oversimplified and somewhat misleading term coined decades ago, points to a deep and important epidemiological truth observed in modern societies. A child's developing immune system, that vast adaptive library with its need for editing and education, requires teachers, It needs to be exposed to a diverse array of microbes, to environmental antigens in dust and pollen, to the gentle, non-threatening challenges of the natural world. In order to properly calibrate its responses, to learn the critical difference between a real, damaging threat and a harmless, or even beneficial, part of the environment. If it is raised in an environment that is overly sanitized, if its early microbial and environmental education is limited through excessive antibiotic use, limited contact with animals and soil, highly processed diets low in fermentable fibers that feed microbes, it may have a harder time learning these distinctions. It might overreact to benign tree pollen, leading to seasonal hay fever, or to dust mite proteins, leading to asthma. These are not signs of a weak or deficient immune system, but often of a poorly educated, misdirected, or imbalanced one. A system that hasn't had enough of the right kind of varied lessons to fine-tune its recognition software, to properly set its thresholds for reaction. The learning is about nuance, about context, about statistical probability. It's about encountering millions of harmless molecular shapes so that the rare, truly dangerous pathogenic shape stands out clearly against that background of normalcy. It's about the immune system learning, through experience, that not all that is foreign is a threat, and that some foreign things are indispensable. This essential education comes from activities like playing in the dirt, from having household pets, from being around other people and their microbes, from consuming a varied, fiber-rich diet, all of which introduce the developing immune system to the wider world in a gradual, manageable, and instructive way. This dynamic education continues unabated throughout your entire life. Every time you recover from a common cold, your immune system refines its memory of that particular rhinovirus strain, perhaps becoming slightly more efficient, though these viruses mutate quickly. Every time you try a new, diverse food, your gut and its immune system sample and assess its components, expanding the library of tolerated antigens. Every time you get a small cut or scrape, the intricate, coordinated dance of inflammation, clotting, cell proliferation, and tissue remodeling teaches your local fibroblasts and keratinocytes about repair, leaving a subtle, lasting memory in the form of changes in the collagen structure of the scar. A local adaptation. Even your daily circadian and seasonal rhythms are profound forms of learned recognition and predictive adaptation. Your suprachiasmatic nucleus, a tiny master clock region in your hypothalamus, learns the reliable rhythm of daylight and darkness through specialized signals from the retinal ganglion cells in your eyes, and uses this to regulate your entire circadian rhythm, the sleep-wake cycle, core body temperature fluctuation, and hormone release, primarily through the rhythmic secretion of melatonin from the pineal gland. Your body learns the patterns of your daily activity when you typically eat, exercise, and rest, adjusting muscle tone, circulation, digestive enzyme release, cortisol peaks in the morning, and growth hormone release at night accordingly. This is adaptation through entrenched familiarity. The body comes to expect certain patterns and learns to preemptively align its physiology to function optimally within them, recognizing the time of day and acting accordingly. When those deeply learned, predictable patterns are suddenly and severely disrupted, by jet lag crossing multiple time zones, by shift work that inverts night and day, by a sudden, major stressful life event that shatters routine. The body's myriad recognition and regulation systems can become profoundly confused. The internal clocks are out of sync with the external environmental cues. It takes days or weeks for the body to learn the new rhythm, to adjust its hormonal secretion patterns, its metabolic expectations, its core temperature fluctuations. This adjustment period, this feeling of being off, fatigued, and out of sorts, is itself a form of active learning. The body working diligently to establish a new familiar, a new baseline of recognition and prediction for its altered circumstances. And so, as we find a natural pause in this first part of our journey, we can begin to see the profound, elegant, and interconnected foundations being laid. From the molecular ID badges on our cells to the rigorous school of the thymus, from the ancient, instinctive sentinels of innate immunity to the intelligent, adaptable memory of the adaptive system, and from the profound, negotiated peace treaty with our internal microbiome to the daily, peaceful assimilation of the outside world into our very substance. The human body is engaged in a continuous, quiet, and relentless process of learning what is self, what is other, and what other can become a welcome, integrated, and essential part of the self. It is a story that begins with hardwired genetic instincts, but blossoms into a lifetime of accumulated, gentle wisdom written in the language of cells and chemical signals. In our next part, we will move even deeper into the cellular conversations, explore the beautiful and necessary biological processes of loss, renewal, and graceful decline within the body, and see how this lifelong learning process intimately shapes our experience of the everyday world. From the air in our lungs to the ground beneath our feet, and how this delicate balance evolves as we journey through the chapters of a long life. For now, as you rest, just let these ideas settle within you, like a gentle mist settling on a quiet internal landscape. Feel, or perhaps simply acknowledge, the quiet, ongoing, miraculous work within you, the recognition, the balance, the lifelong learning that requires no conscious thought or direction from you, yet is the very foundation of your being here, listening, in this present moment of calm. As we drift deeper into this quiet story of recognition, let us gently shift our focus from the foundational systems that define self and other to the beautiful, ongoing conversation these systems have with the world you inhabit. We've explored the immune system's education and the peace treaty with your microbiome. Now let us consider how this learning is not confined to microscopic battles or digestive diplomacy, but is woven into the very fabric of your physical experience, into the air you breathe, the food you taste, the ground you walk upon, and the quiet, constant dialogue between your mind and your body. This is where balance, familiarity, and adaptation move from biological concepts to lived sensory experiences. Consider for a moment the simple act of breathing. With each inhalation, you draw in not only life-giving oxygen, but also a universe of microscopic particles, dust, pollen, fungal spores, bacteria, and viruses, all suspended in the air. This presents your respiratory tract with a continuous, real-time challenge of recognition. The lining of your nose, sinuses, and lungs is not a passive tube. It is a highly active mucosal surface, much like the gut, but designed for air. It is coated in a sticky mucus, propelled by tiny, waving hairs called cilia. This mucociliary escalator is a first line of defense, trapping many inhaled particles and sweeping them toward your throat to be swallowed and neutralized by stomach acid. A clever collaboration between systems. But the immune cells stationed in the lung tissue, the alveolar macrophages, are also constant students. They sample the air you breathe. For the most part, they recognize the common, harmless dust of your home environment, the pollen native to your region, the typical microbial fare of your climate, as familiar. No alarm is raised. You breathe easily. This is learned tolerance for your aerial environment. However, travel to a new place with different vegetation, and your system might encounter a pollen it doesn't recognize. The immune cells, lacking a memory file for this new shape, might overreact, perceiving a threat where there is none. This is the onset of temporary, situational allergies. The body's recognition system scrambling to categorize a new, benign input. With repeated, calm exposure over days or seasons, it often learns. It may create regulatory cells specific to that pollen, teaching itself tolerance. The sneezing and itching subside as familiarity is established. Your body has adapted to its new atmospheric context. This is a clear example of how the principle of exposure and learning governs even our most fundamental interaction with the world. Now let's turn our attention downward to the very interface between your body and the earth. Your feet touching the ground. This act of standing, of walking, is a masterpiece of learned recognition called proprioception. It is your body's internal sense of its own position, movement, and balance in space. This isn't done with your eyes. It's accomplished through a network of specialized sensory receptors embedded in your muscles, tendons, and joints. These are called proprioceptors. With every step you take, these receptors are activated. They send a constant, whispering stream of data to your brain and spinal cord. The ankle is flexing at this angle. The weight is shifting to the ball of the foot. The calf muscle is stretching this much. The knee is bearing this much pressure. Your central nervous system, the brain and spinal cord, has spent a lifetime learning to recognize these patterns. It has built an incredibly detailed internal map of your body's geometry and its relationship to gravity. When you were a baby learning to walk, this map was crude and error-prone. You stumbled, you fell. Each stumble was a lesson. The proprioceptive feedback from a fall, a sudden, unexpected pattern of pressure and stretch, was registered as unstable. The motor cortex of your brain, which controls movement, correlated that faulty output with the uncomfortable result. Gradually, through millions of repetitions, your nervous system learned to recognize the specific proprioceptive patterns that equate to balanced, stable, standing, and efficient walking. It learned to make tiny, automatic adjustments in muscle tension from your core to your toes to maintain that balance. This is a profound form of non-conscious learning. The ground beneath you is recognized not as a mere surface, but as a physical dialogue partner. Your body learns the firmness of hardwood, the give of carpet, the unevenness of grass, the instability of gravel. It adapts its gait and posture almost instantly, calling on libraries of stored recognition patterns. This system is so learned, so familiar, that you only notice it when it is challenged, walking on a rocking boat or on a slippery ice patch. Then the recognition becomes conscious as the brain searches for a familiar pattern and finds none, forcing you to move with deliberate, unlearned caution. Maintaining this proprioceptive wisdom is a lifelong practice of movement. Gentle activities like Tai Chi or yoga are, in essence, deep conversations with this system, refining the map, teaching the body to recognize ever more subtle shifts in balance and alignment, reinforcing the familiar dialogue between self and space. This leads us to the broader concept of the body's structural recognition, how it knows its own shape and maintains its integrity. Beyond the immune system's molecular checks, there is a continuous, cellular-level process of quality control and renewal that defines the physical self. Your body is not a static statue, it is a flowing river. Every day, billions of your cells reach the end of their natural lifespan and die. Skin cells slough off. Old red blood cells are filtered out in the spleen. Cells lining your gut are shed. This is a planned, orderly process called apoptosis, or programmed cell death. It is the graceful, silent exit of familiar players. The dying cell undergoes changes that are instantly recognized by nearby phagocytic cells, like the macrophages we met earlier. They see the eat me signals on the apoptotic cell's surface, engulf it, and digest it cleanly, without triggering inflammation. This is recognition of an ending as a natural, expected part of the cycle. It is the body knowing how to let go of its own parts with dignity, making space for the new. Simultaneously, stem cells and progenitor cells in various tissues are dividing, creating fresh, new cells to take their place. These new cells integrate into the existing tissue, assuming their function. The surrounding architecture recognizes them, and they recognize their place. This constant, balanced turnover, death and rebirth, is how your liver regenerates, your skin heals, your bones remodel. It is a rhythm of release and renewal that is fundamental to the body's recognition of its own ever-changing wholeness. Now let's weave the mind more consciously into this tapestry. The connection between your mental state and your body's recognition systems is not mystical. It is physiological, mediated by the neuroendocrine system, the interplay of your nervous system and your hormones. Your brain is the ultimate interpreter of experience, and it constantly signals to the rest of the body whether the environment is safe or threatening. This perception has a direct and powerful effect on those systems of balance and tolerance we've been discussing. When your mind perceives stress, danger, or anxiety, whether from a looming work deadline, a personal conflict, or even a worrying thought, a part of your brain called the hypothalamus activates the sympathetic nervous system, the famous fight or flight response. It also signals the pituitary gland to release hormones that stimulate your adrenal glands to produce cortisol and adrenaline. These stress hormones are designed for acute survival. They cause your heart to race, your breath to quicken, and your muscles to tense. But they also send a powerful message to your immune system. In the short term, they can actually boost inflammatory responses, preparing the body for potential injury and infection. However, And this is crucial when this stress state becomes chronic, when the mind consistently recognizes the world as threatening or overwhelming. The signals become distorted. Cortisol, at persistently high levels, can suppress parts of the adaptive immune system and disrupt the delicate balance of the inflammatory response. It can weaken the gut barrier, making it more leaky. It can alter the composition of the gut microbiome, reducing the diversity of your microbial partners. In essence, a mind stuck in a state of perceived threat can telegraph confusion to the body's recognition systems. It can tell the immune system to be on high alert in a context where there is no physical threat, potentially lowering the threshold for inflammatory reactions and undermining learned tolerance. It's as if the body's internal alarm is stuck in the on position, confusing the subtle language of cellular dialogue. Conversely, when the mind is in a state of perceived safety, calm, or relaxation, when you are listening to a peaceful voice, breathing deeply, or feeling connected, a different nerve pathway is activated. The parasympathetic nervous system, often called the rest and digest system. Its main nerve is the vagus nerve, a meandering, bidirectional superhighway that connects your brain to your heart, lungs, and digestive organs. When activated, it slows the heart rate, deepens and slows breathing, and stimulates digestion. Importantly, it also sends direct, calming signals to the immune system. Vagus nerve activity promotes the release of acetylcholine, which signals immune cells to reduce their production of inflammatory cytokines. It supports the function of the regulatory T cells, the peacekeepers. It enhances gut motility and barrier function. In this state, the mind is signaling safety to the body. This safety signal allows the immune system to stand down from a general alert, to be more discerning, to reinforce tolerance. It creates the internal physiological conditions where the body's learning systems can operate optimally, where it can properly recognize friend from foe, self from other, without the noise of perceived existential threat. This is why practices that cultivate calm, meditation, gentle movement, mindful breathing, even the act of listening to a soothing narrative, are not merely feel-good activities. They are active participants in training your body's recognition systems. They are rehearsals for the state of safety, reinforcing the neural and hormonal pathways that tell your trillion cells all is well. You can attend to maintenance, to learning, to peaceful coexistence. Let's apply this to a very practical, daily recognition system, your metabolism and hunger. How does your body know when to eat, what to crave, and when to stop? This is orchestrated by a complex hormonal conversation between your gut, your fat tissue, and your brain. After a meal, your gut releases hormones like cholecystokinin, CCK, and peptide YY, which send signals to the brain's hypothalamus, saying, "We are full. Energy is arriving." Your fat cells release the hormone leptin, which communicates long-term energy stores. We have ample reserves. The brain recognizes these signals and suppresses appetite. Between meals, as blood sugar drops, your stomach releases ghrelin, the hunger hormone, which signals it is time to seek food. This is a brilliant homeostatic recognition system designed for balance. However, this system can be learned, and in our modern environment, it can also be mislearned. When you consistently eat highly processed foods rich in refined sugars and fats, they can hijack this signaling. They cause rapid spikes and crashes in blood sugar and may blunt the sensitivity of the brain to leptin and other satiety signals. Over time, the brain starts to recognize these distorted hormonal patterns as normal. The clear stop signal becomes muffled. The craving for quick energy from sugar becomes a learned, powerful drive. The body's innate recognition of nutritional sufficiency becomes confused. Restoring balance often requires a gentle retraining, a return to whole, fiber-rich foods that produce a slower, more sustained hormonal response, allowing the brain to relearn the true signals of satiety and energy balance. It's about refamiliarizing the system with the nutritional patterns it evolved to recognize. Similarly, your body's recognition of day and night, the circadian rhythm, governs not just sleep, but almost every physiological process: hormone release, body temperature, digestion, and even the activity of certain immune cells. Specialized light-sensitive cells in your eyes detect morning light and signal the suprachiasmatic nucleus to suppress melatonin and ramp up cortisol for wakefulness. As darkness falls, melatonin rises, promoting sleep. This rhythm is a learned recognition of the Earth's rotation. But when you expose yourself to bright blue light from screens late into the night, you are sending a contradictory signal. You are telling the brain's recognition system it is daytime. This confuses the entire cascade. Melatonin release is delayed or suppressed. Cortisol patterns may be disrupted. The next day, the system is out of sync. Hunger hormones might be off, energy levels dip at strange times, and even immune vigilance can be slightly dysregulated. Respecting this natural rhythm by seeking morning sunlight and dimming evening lights is a way of honoring one of your body's most fundamental learned recognitions, allowing all other systems to align with that familiar, reliable beat. We cannot discuss the body's learning without touching upon the remarkable phenomenon of muscle memory, or more accurately, neurological adaptation. When you learn a new physical skill, playing a piano piece, knitting, swinging a golf club, the initial phase is clumsy, conscious, and effortful. Your brain is forging new neural pathways, recruiting motor neurons, and your proprioceptors are flooding the system with unfamiliar data. With repetition, something beautiful happens. The sequence of movements becomes encoded in the cerebellum and basal ganglia, brain regions dedicated to motor control and habit formation. The recognition of the correct movement pattern shifts from the conscious, thinking cortex to the automatic, non-conscious, subcortical areas. The body has learned the skill. The proprioceptive feedback from a correct swing is now recognized as right, and tiny deviations are automatically corrected. This is why you can ride a bike after years of not doing so. The learned recognition is deeply embedded. This principle applies to posture. If you sit slumped for years, your nervous system and muscles learn to recognize that slouched position as normal. The stretched muscles in your back and the shortened muscles in your chest adapt to this length. Changing your posture feels wrong and difficult because you are asking the system to reject a deeply familiar pattern and learn a new one. It requires conscious, persistent repetition to create a new normal that the body will eventually recognize and maintain automatically. Now let's integrate this on a grand scale. How does the body, as a whole, recognize its own limits and its need for rest? Fatigue is not merely an absence of energy. It is a sophisticated signaling system. During prolonged physical or mental activity, metabolites like adenosine build up in the brain. Inflammation may tick up slightly. Energy stores deplete. This collective biochemical state is recognized by the brain as fatigue. The signal is a compelling urge to stop, to rest. This is a protective recognition. It prevents you from damaging muscles, from making cognitive errors, from pushing systems into a state of breakdown. Sleep is the ultimate recognition of this need. It is not passive shutdown. It is a vital, active state of reorganization, repair, and memory consolidation. During deep sleep, growth hormone is released, facilitating tissue repair. The glymphatic system, a waste clearance network in the brain, becomes highly active, flushing out metabolic debris that accumulated during the day, including proteins associated with neurodegeneration. The immune system recalibrates. To ignore feelings of fatigue, to consistently override this recognition system with stimulants or sheer willpower, is to teach the body that its internal signals are irrelevant. Over time, this can blunt the sensitivity of the system, leading to a state where you no longer recognize early signs of fatigue until you hit exhaustion or illness. Learning to listen to these gentle prompts for rest is a critical form of self-recognition, honoring the body's wise, inherent knowledge of its own needs. As we move through life, the very medium in which our cells live, the extracellular matrix, also tells a story of learned adaptation. This matrix is a complex mesh of collagen, elastin, and other proteins that provides structure to your tissues. It is not inert scaffolding. It is a dynamic, responsive environment. When you exercise, especially with weight-bearing or resistance, you create microscopic stresses in muscles and bones. Cells called fibroblasts and osteocytes recognized this stress. They respond by remodeling the matrix, laying down more collagen to strengthen tendons, or depositing more mineral to densify bones. The body has learned to recognize mechanical stress as a signal to build stronger infrastructure. Conversely, with prolonged inactivity, the recognition signal is absent. The body, in its efficient way, recognizes that a heavy, dense bone or a robust tendon is no longer needed. It allows resorption, leading to thinning bones and weaker connective tissue. Your structure adapts to the recognized demands placed upon it. This is the principle of use it or lose it, framed as a cellular recognition and response system. Finally, in this section, let's contemplate the body's recognition of healing. When you are injured, a cut, a bruise, a broken bone, the body doesn't panic in the abstract. It launches a precise, staged healing program that is a masterpiece of localized recognition and communication. The injury disrupts cells and blood vessels. Platelets instantly recognize the exposed collagen and form a clot. Inflammatory cells rush in to clean up debris and release growth factors. Fibroblasts recognize these growth factors and migrate in to lay down new collagen, forming a scar. In bone, specialized cells recognize the fracture edges and begin building a callus. This entire process is a temporary, focused suspension of the usual, peaceful state, a necessary inflammatory and proliferative phase that is itself tightly regulated, and eventually turned off. As healing concludes, the inflammatory signals fade. The scar matures and remodels. The area is reintegrated into the body, though perhaps with a different texture or composition, a testament to the event, a learned adaptation to a local trauma. The body has recognized damage, responded, and then recognized completion, returning to a state of vigilant calm. All of these processes, from breathing to balancing, from digesting to sleeping, from healing to adapting to stress, are facets of the same grand theme. Your body as a learning, recognizing, adapting entity. It is not a machine that simply wears down. It is a living system that constantly converses with its internal and external environments, updating its software, refining its responses, and seeking a state of balanced, familiar equilibrium. It learns the rhythm of your days, the composition of your diet, the patterns of your movement, and even the tone of your thoughts. This learning is the silent, lifelong work that underpins your vitality. As we prepare to move into the next part of our story, we will gently turn our attention to the times when this elegant system of recognition falters or faces new challenges, particularly with the passage of time. We'll explore what happens when the immune system mistakenly attacks the self, how chronic inflammation becomes a confused signal, and how the processes of learning and adaptation gracefully but perceptibly change as we grow older. We'll look at the quiet shifts in balance, not with alarm, but with understanding, seeing them as part of the continuous narrative of adaptation. For now, let the awareness of your body's constant, quiet dialogue settle within you. Feel the breath moving in and out, recognizing the familiar air. Sense the subtle weight of your body on the surface beneath you, a recognition of support. Notice the quiet hum of your being, a symphony of 1,000,000,000,000 recognitions playing softly in the dark, maintaining the peaceful, intricate balance that is you. As our quiet story of recognition and balance unfolds, we now arrive at a chapter that is often spoken of with apprehension, but which we will approach with a sense of deep understanding and gentle curiosity. The story of how these elegant systems adapt and change over the long arc of a lifetime. The body's learning does not cease. It evolves. Its strategies for maintaining balance, its definitions of familiarity, and its pace of adaptation all undergo a subtle, profound transformation as we journey through our later decades. This is not a story of simple decline or breakdown. It is a story of shifting priorities, of wisdom layered upon experience, and of a different, more conservative kind of balance. It is about how the body, having spent a lifetime learning what belongs, begins to manage its resources with a different kind of intelligence, focusing on maintaining the harmony of the whole system with the energy available to it. Let us begin with the immune system's evolution, a process scientists call immunosenescence. This is not a failure, but an aging of the immune system, much like the graying of hair. It is characterized by several key, quiet shifts. One of the most significant is the natural, lifelong involution of the thymus gland. Remember, the thymus is the school where young T cells learn to recognize self from non-self. After puberty, this gland gradually shrinks and is largely replaced by fatty tissue. By later adulthood, its output of fresh, naive T cells, blank slates ready to learn new threats, trickles to a very low level. Your adaptive immune system must now rely heavily on the vast library of memory cells it has built up over decades of exposure. This is a system running on its accumulated wisdom, its vast catalog of past encounters. There is a profound beauty in this. Your body is defended by the living memory of a lifetime of survived challenges. However, it also means the system can become less agile when facing a truly novel pathogen it has never seen before. The response might be slower, or it might rely on cross-reactive memory that isn't a perfect fit, leading to a less efficient defense. This is one reason why vaccinations are so crucial in later life. They provide a safe, structured way to update this memory library, to teach the experienced but less flexible system to recognize new threats like updated strains of influenza or pneumococcal bacteria without having to face the full disease. Another hallmark of an aging immune system is a phenomenon known as inflammaging. This is a low-grade, chronic, systemic inflammation that persists in the absence of an active infection. It's as if the background volume of the immune system's alert signal has been turned up slightly, creating a gentle, constant hum. The precise causes are complex and intertwined. They include the accumulation of senescent cells, old cells that have stopped dividing but resist apoptosis and instead secrete a cocktail of inflammatory signals. They include the wear and tear on mitochondria, the energy powerhouses of cells, which can leak molecules that trigger inflammation. They also include the lifelong exposure to antigens, which may slowly fill the immune system's memory space, and the potential for latent viral reactivation, like the chickenpox virus shingles. This simmering inflammation is not like the acute, hot swelling of a fresh injury. It is subtle, pervasive, and is thought to be a key driver in the development of many age-associated conditions: the stiffening of arteries, the weakening of muscles, the fogging of cognitive clarity. The body's inflammatory recognition system, once a precise tool for acute repair, becomes slightly less discerning, firing at a low level in response to the accumulated molecular debris of a long life. Simultaneously, the very concept of self can become slightly blurred. The rigorous education in the thymus ensured young T cells that reacted to self were deleted. But over a lifetime, with the thymus no longer producing new teachers, and with constant exposure to stress and inflammation, some of the regulatory checks can weaken. The population of peacekeeping regulatory T cells, Tregs, may not function as robustly. Occasionally, a formerly quiescent self-reactive T cell, or B cell, perhaps one that escaped deletion long ago or mutated over time, can become activated. This is the root of autoimmunity, where the body's learned tolerance for its own tissues breaks down. Conditions like rheumatoid arthritis, where the immune system attacks joint linings, or certain types of thyroiditis, emerge from this loss of precise self-recognition. It is a learning error on a grand scale, where a part of the familiar, essential self is mistakenly categorized as a foreign invader that must be destroyed. Managing these conditions often involves using medications that gently but firmly suppress the overzealous immune response, trying to coax the system back toward a state of tolerance, to reteach it what belongs. Parallel to the immune system's journey, the microbiome, that essential internal community, undergoes its own transformation with age. Diversity often decreases. The robust, varied garden of youth, filled with different species performing different functions, can become less varied. Certain beneficial groups, like the bifidobacteria that are so prevalent in infancy and are associated with gut barrier health and immune modulation, tend to decline. There can be a rise in more pro-inflammatory species. This shift is influenced by many factors: a lifetime of dietary patterns, the repeated use of medications, especially antibiotics, changes in digestive physiology like a reduced stomach acid, and even alterations in mobility and lifestyle. A less diverse microbiome is less resilient. It is less able to perform its functions effectively, digesting fiber, producing vitamins, training the immune system. It may also be more prone to dysbiosis, where a single, less beneficial species can overgrow. This altered microbial landscape communicates directly with the aging immune system, potentially contributing to inflammaging and weakening the gut barrier. The lifelong dialogue between body and microbes enters a new phase, where the conversation may become less rich, less nuanced. Supporting microbial diversity in later years through a diet rich in varied fibers, prebiotics, fermented foods, probiotics, and polyphenols from colorful plants becomes a powerful way to nurture this partnership, to provide the familiar, beneficial signals the body has learned to rely upon. Now let us turn to the sensory and perceptual recognition systems that connect us to the world. The lens of the eye gradually yellows and stiffens, leading to presbyopia, the need for reading glasses. This is a physical change, but its effect is on recognition. Fine print, once instantly clear, becomes a blur. The world of close detail softens. The auditory system, too, undergoes changes. The tiny hair cells in the inner ear that translate sound vibrations into nerve signals can degrade over time, particularly those for high-frequency sounds. This makes it harder to distinguish consonants in speech, to hear in noisy rooms. The world's soundtrack becomes muffled, losing some of its high-fidelity clarity. These are not just sensory losses. They are changes in how the brain receives information. The brain must work harder to interpret less clear signals. It must guess at words it didn't fully hear, piece together images with less detail. This extra cognitive load can be tiring. It can lead to social withdrawal if conversation becomes exhausting, or to misunderstandings. The brain's recognition of the world becomes an act of diligent reconstruction rather than immediate, effortless perception. This is why creating a communication-friendly environment, good lighting, reduced background noise, facing the person speaking, is an act of profound kindness. It is about helping an aging recognition system function without unnecessary strain. The musculoskeletal system tells a powerful story of adapted recognition through structure. We mentioned bone remodeling earlier, the process where osteoclasts break down old bone and osteoblasts build new bone. In youth, this process is in tight balance. With the hormonal changes of later life, particularly the decline in estrogen in women and testosterone in men, this balance shifts. The osteoblasts become less active, while osteoclast activity may continue or even increase. The body's recognition system for mechanical stress remains, but its ability to respond to that signal by building new bone diminishes. the scale tips toward resorption. Bones become less dense, more porous, more fragile. This is osteoporosis. Similarly, in muscles, a condition called sarcopenia occurs, the gradual loss of muscle mass, strength, and quality. This isn't just due to disuse, though inactivity accelerates it. There are cellular and hormonal changes, a reduced efficiency in protein synthesis, a blunted response to the anabolic signals from exercise and food, and an increase in inflammatory signals that can promote muscle breakdown. The body's recognition of the need for strong muscle and bone is still there, but its executive capacity to maintain them is reduced. However, and this is critically important, the system is still responsive. It has not gone deaf. Resistance exercise, lifting weights, using resistance bands, doing body weight exercises, remains a powerful, recognizable signal. It shouts to the bones and muscles, "You are needed. Build." And even in later age, they will respond, albeit at a slower pace. The adaptation is still possible. The learning that mechanical stress requires structural reinforcement is a language the body still understands. Maintaining strength is a daily conversation in that language, a way of keeping the recognition pathways active and clear. The metabolic system's recognition abilities also undergo a quiet shift. Insulin resistance, where muscle, fat, and liver cells stop responding efficiently to the insulin key, tends to increase with age. This is due to factors like accumulating visceral fat, reduced muscle mass, which is a major site for glucose disposal, chronic inflammation, and perhaps mitochondrial changes. The cells no longer recognize the insulin signal as potently. Glucose stays in the bloodstream longer, leading to higher average blood sugar levels. The pancreas beta cells, which recognize high blood sugar and release insulin, have to work harder. Over time, they can become exhausted. This is the path to type 2 diabetes. It is a systemic failure of metabolic recognition and response. Furthermore, the hormonal signals governing hunger and satiety, leptin and ghrelin, can also become less sensitive. The brain may not recognize the "I'm full" signal from leptin as clearly, leading to a tendency to eat more than needed. Or conversely, in some, the "I'm hungry" signal from ghrelin may diminish, leading to unintentional weight loss and loss of appetite. The body's elegant system for recognizing and managing energy balance requires more conscious support. Mindful attention to the quality and timing of meals, a focus on protein and fiber to promote satiety, and regular movement to improve insulin sensitivity. Perhaps one of the most profound areas of changing recognition lies within the brain itself. Cognitive aging is, in many ways, about the speed and flexibility of neural recognition. The brain's white matter, the insulated wiring that connects different regions, can develop small lesions or lose integrity, slowing the speed of signal transmission. The synthesis and recycling of neurotransmitters like dopamine and acetylcholine may become less efficient. The brain's incredible plasticity, its ability to rewire itself, form new connections, and learn, does not vanish, but it does change. It becomes more experience-dependent. Learning a completely new, complex skill from scratch, like a new language or instrument, becomes more challenging, requiring more repetition and effort. The brain's recognition of new patterns is slower. However, what often increases is crystallized intelligence, the vast library of accumulated knowledge, patterns, and wisdom. The brain becomes exceptionally good at recognizing situations it has seen before, at making connections based on deep experience, at seeing the big picture. It's the difference between quickly learning a new software program, fluid intelligence, and offering profound advice based on a lifetime of human understanding, crystallized intelligence. The aging brain is not deficient. It is specialized. It prioritizes the recognition of meaningful patterns over the rapid acquisition of novel ones. Furthermore, the brain's internal housekeeping, like the glymphatic system that clears metabolic waste during deep sleep, may become less efficient. This can allow for the accumulation of misfolded proteins, like amyloid beta and tau, which are associated with Alzheimer's disease. These proteins can interfere with synaptic communication, essentially jamming the signals of recognition between neurons. The progression of such neurodegeneration is a tragic corruption of the brain's ability to recognize its own patterns, its own memories, and eventually, even the faces of loved ones. Yet the brain remains a resilient, adaptive organ. Neurogenesis, the birth of new neurons, does occur in specific regions, like the hippocampus, vital for memory, throughout life, albeit at a reduced rate. This process is powerfully influenced by lifestyle, aerobic exercise, learning, social engagement, and a diet rich in omega-3 fatty acids and flavonoids are all signals the brain recognizes as prompts for growth and maintenance. They say, stay engaged. This environment requires an active mind. The brain responds. Similarly, the concept of cognitive reserve explains why some brains show significant physical signs of pathology, amyloid plaques, for example, yet the individuals function quite well. A lifetime of education, complex work, and intellectual engagement builds a denser, more interconnected neural network, a stronger, more resilient system. When one pathway is damaged, the brain recognizes the need and can route information through alternative, familiar pathways. It's a testament to a lifetime of learning, creating a robust recognition network that can withstand some fraying of the wires. So, how do we gently support this entire interconnected system as it navigates these natural shifts? The answer lies in reinforcing the very principles we've explored: balance, familiarity, and intelligent adaptation. We do not fight against the tide of time, but we learn to swim with a different stroke, conserving energy while still moving forward with purpose. Nutrition becomes a primary tool for communication. The goal shifts from just fueling growth to providing precise signals that reduce inflammation, support microbial diversity, and nourish aging cells. A dietary pattern like the Mediterranean diet, abundant in colorful vegetables, antioxidants, polyphenols, fruits, whole grains, fiber, olive oil, anti-inflammatory monounsaturated fats, fatty fish, omega-3s, and nuts, is essentially a language the aging body recognizes as supportive. It provides the building blocks to repair cellular membranes, the antioxidants to quench inflammatory fires, and the fiber to feed a diverse microbiome. Protein intake becomes especially crucial to counter sarcopenia. Spreading protein intake evenly across meals, aiming for high-quality sources like eggs, fish, poultry, legumes, and dairy, sends a consistent signal to muscle tissue. Maintain yourself. we need you. Adequate hydration is critical, as the thirst mechanism itself can become less sensitive with age. Drinking water regularly is a conscious act of recognizing a need the body may no longer loudly proclaim. Movement is no longer primarily about peak performance or aesthetics. It is about maintaining the dialogue between mind and body, about sending those recognizable signals of need to bones, muscles, balance systems, and the brain. A balanced movement regimen might include strength training, the clear signal for muscle and bone, balance exercises like Tai Chi, or simple standing routines to keep the proprioceptive map sharp and prevent falls, flexibility work to maintain the fluid recognition of joint range, and cardiovascular activity like walking or swimming to support heart health, circulation, and brain perfusion. The pace may be slower, the weights lighter, but the consistency is the message. It is the daily conversation that says, I am still in use. Stay with me. Sleep transforms from a nightly recharge to a non-negotiable pillar of repair and clearance. The architecture of sleep changes with age. Less deep, slow-wave sleep, more frequent awakenings. This can reduce the efficiency of hormonal release, tissue repair, and glymphatic clearance. Honoring sleep becomes paramount. This means cultivating a consistent, wind-down routine, creating a dark, cool, and quiet sleep environment, managing evening fluid intake to minimize disruptions, and viewing daytime exposure to natural light as a key signal to anchor the circadian rhythm. A short, early afternoon nap can be a wise adaptation, a way to supplement sleep without interfering with nighttime rest. Stress management evolves from a lifestyle enhancement to a physiological necessity. The aging body is less resilient to the hormonal onslaught of chronic stress. The elevated cortisol and inflammation can accelerate muscle loss, bone thinning, cognitive decline, and immune dysfunction. Practices that actively engage the parasympathetic rest and digest system become essential medicine. This includes mindful breathing exercises, meditation, gentle yoga, spending time in nature, forest bathing, or simply engaging in hobbies that induce a state of flow and timelessness. It is about consciously creating moments where the mind recognizes safety, so it can broadcast that signal of safety to every cell in the body, lowering the inflammatory hum and allowing repair processes to proceed unhindered. Social connection is far from a mere luxury. It is a biological imperative. Loneliness and social isolation are recognized by the body as profound threats. They are associated with increased levels of inflammation, elevated stress hormones, poorer immune function, and a higher risk of cognitive decline and cardiovascular disease. Meaningful social engagement, on the other hand, is a complex cognitive exercise, recognizing facial expressions, following conversation, empathizing, and a source of emotional comfort. It signals to the ancient parts of our brain that we are part of a tribe, that we are safe. Maintaining connections, fostering community, and engaging in purposeful activity are powerful ways to keep the brain's recognition systems for empathy, joy, and belonging actively engaged. Cognitive engagement follows the use it or lose it principle as well. The brain needs novel but manageable challenges to maintain its plasticity. This doesn't mean stressful, frustrating study. It can be learning the rules of a new card game, following a new recipe, taking a different route on a walk, gardening, painting, or listening to complex music. The key is gentle novelty within a framework of enjoyment. It's about giving the brain new patterns to recognize and integrate, keeping its networks agile. In this chapter of life, the relationship with the healthcare system also changes. It becomes less about acute intervention and more about proactive, gentle management, a partnership in maintenance. Regular checkups are not about finding something wrong, but about taking stock of the system's current balance, monitoring blood pressure, cholesterol, blood sugar, kidney, and thyroid function. Vaccinations become crucial tune-ups for the immune memory. Medication management requires careful attention, as the aging liver and kidneys may metabolize and clear drugs differently. And polypharmacy, the use of multiple medications, can lead to confusing interactions. This is a time for clear, honest communication with healthcare providers, ensuring that every intervention supports the overall goal of balanced function and recognizes the changing physiology of the body. Ultimately, the journey into later life is the ultimate test and expression of the body's lifelong learning. It is where all the accumulated adaptations, the familiar rhythms, the balanced systems, are called upon to function in a new context of changed resources and priorities. Challenges like immunosenescence, inflammaging, and sarcopenia are not signs that the system is broken. They are evidence that it is operating under a new set of parameters. The goal shifts from growth and peak performance to maintenance, resilience, and the preservation of quality and harmony. The body's wisdom in these years is a quiet, deep wisdom. It is the wisdom of knowing what is essential and letting go of what is not. It is the wisdom of pacing, of listening more intently to internal signals, of recognizing that recovery takes a little longer, that adaptation happens at a gentler tempo. It is about finding a new equilibrium, a new normal that is just as valid and whole as the vigorous normal of youth. As we prepare to conclude our story in the final part, we will bring all these threads together. We will reflect on the mind's profound role in perceiving this lifelong process, not with fear or resistance, but with acceptance and partnership. We will explore how a mindset of curiosity and gentleness can itself be a powerful signal of safety to an aging body. And we will see how the narrative of balance, familiarity, and adaptation culminates not in an ending, but in a continuous, graceful integration, a quiet vitality that endures through every season of life. For now, let this understanding of the body's graceful evolution settle within you. See the changes not as erosion, but as the soft patina on a well-loved piece of wood, the evidence of a long and rich conversation between a singular life and the world it has learned to call home. And so we arrive at the final, integrative movement of our quiet story. We have journeyed from the molecular badges of self, through the bustling education of the immune system and the symbiotic peace of the microbiome, into the body's daily dialogue with the world through breath, balance, and sensation. We have observed with gentle clarity how these systems of recognition and balance gracefully shift their strategies over the long arc of a lifetime. Now we come to the heart of the matter, the conscious mind's role in this grand, silent symphony. How do our thoughts, our perceptions, our very sense of self influence this deep biological process of recognizing what belongs. And how can we, as conscious participants in our own lives, cultivate a partnership with this innate wisdom, fostering a state of quiet vitality that honors both the body's adaptations and the spirit's need for peace? This brings us to the profound and intimate connection between the mind and the body's defense and repair systems, often called the neuroimmune axis or psychoneuroimmunology. It is the scientific validation of what we have always sensed intuitively, that our mental and emotional states are not separate from our physical health, but are deeply woven into the same fabric. We touched earlier on how stress signals can create inflammation and how safety signals can promote tolerance. Now let's explore this landscape more deeply. Your brain is not a sealed command center issuing one-way orders. It is a listening organ, immersed in a sea of chemical information from your body. It receives constant updates via the bloodstream, hormones, cytokines, and via the vast network of the vagus nerve, which carries signals from your heart, lungs, and gut directly to your brainstem. This means your brain is continuously recognizing your body's internal state. Is the heart racing? Is the gut churning? Are inflammatory cytokines elevated? The brain interprets these signals, often below the level of conscious thought, and generates a feeling: anxiety, calm, fatigue, malaise, or well-being. Crucially, this flow is bidirectional. Your conscious thoughts and focused attention can send powerful signals back down the same pathways. When you dwell on a past worry or a future fear, the brain's amygdala and hypothalamus recognize this as a cognitive threat, even if you are physically safe in your chair. They activate the stress response, releasing cortisol and adrenaline, which then signal to immune cells and alter gut permeability. Conversely, when you consciously engage in an activity that brings you deep calm or joy, listening to beloved music, feeling the sun on your skin, sharing a genuine laugh, the brain recognizes safety and connection. It activates the parasympathetic system via the vagus nerve, which sends calming, anti-inflammatory signals throughout the body. This is not placebo or wishful thinking. It is physiology. Your thoughts and perceptions are a form of internal environment that your body is constantly learning to recognize and respond to. A mind habitually tuned to threat teaches the body a state of chronic defensive alert. A mind practiced in recognizing moments of safety, gratitude, or beauty teaches the body a state of restorative calm. You are, in a very real sense, the curator of your internal emotional climate, which your body's cells experience as their fundamental reality. This leads us to the vital skill of interoception, the perception of sensations from inside the body. It is the conscious counterpart to all the unconscious recognition we've discussed. Interoception is your ability to feel your heartbeat, notice the rise and fall of your breath, sense hunger or fullness, feel muscular tension, or perceive the subtle signals of fatigue or emerging illness. For some, this internal landscape is a noisy, sometimes overwhelming place. Palpitations felt as panic, gut sensations as anxiety. For others, it is a distant murmur, easily ignored. Cultivating a gentle, accurate interoceptive awareness is like tuning a radio to the precise frequency of your own being. It allows you to recognize your body's signals earlier and with more nuance. Instead of ignoring a twinge of joint pain, until it becomes debilitating. You recognize it as a request for a gentler movement. Instead of powering through mental fog with caffeine, you recognize it as a need for true rest or hydration. This is conscious collaboration with the body's innate wisdom. Practices like mindful body scans, gentle yoga, or simply pausing several times a day to take 3 conscious breaths and ask, "What do I feel right now?" are ways of training this recognition. You're not trying to control or judge the sensations, but simply to acknowledge them, to listen. This act of listening itself is a signal of safety and respect to the nervous system. It says, "I hear you. I recognize you." This can down-regulate the stress response and foster a sense of internal alliance. Within this framework, the concept of familiarity takes on a powerful psychological dimension. Humans are creatures of habit, not merely out of laziness, but because predictability is recognized by our nervous system as safety. A well-worn routine, the same morning tea, the familiar walk around the neighborhood, the evening ritual of reading, provides a lattice of recognizable cues that tell the brain, all is well. The world is orderly and predictable. This reduces the cognitive and metabolic load of constant decision-making and threat assessment. For an aging system, this lattice becomes increasingly supportive. A predictable rhythm for meals supports stable blood sugar. A regular sleep schedule reinforces the circadian rhythm. A consistent social engagement, like a weekly phone call with a friend or a visit to a community center, provides reliable, emotional nourishment. These are not ruts. They are the deeply grooved paths of a life well lived. Paths that the mind and body recognize and travel with ease, conserving energy for the moments that truly require adaptation. Introducing novelty is still important for cognitive vitality, but it is most beneficial when done within a secure base of the familiar. Trying a new recipe for a familiar Sunday dinner, taking a different path but in the same beloved park, learning a new card game with old friends. Let's consider the role of narrative itself, the stories we tell ourselves about our health and our aging process. The mind is a meaning-making machine. It seeks to recognize patterns not just in the external world, but in the events of our own lives. A diagnosis like arthritis or hypertension is not just a biological fact. It is a story we begin to tell. Do we frame it as a terrifying sentence of decline, an enemy to be fought with anger and resentment? Or do we frame it as a new piece of information about our unique system, a change in the terrain that requires adjusted navigation, a chapter in our long story of adaptation? The former story creates a state of internal war, flooding the body with stress chemicals. The latter, while acknowledging challenge, creates a state of mindful engagement. It is a story of partnership. Research in the field of mindset shows that our beliefs about aging itself have measurable effects. Individuals who view aging as a process of inevitable decline and loss tend to walk slower, recover from illness more poorly, and even have shorter lifespans. Those who view it as a time of continued growth, wisdom, and adaptation tend to fare better. Our narrative is a lens through which our mind recognizes our experience, and that recognition shapes our physiology. Choosing, where possible, to frame challenges within a story of resilience, learning, and gentle adaptation is not naive optimism. It is a therapeutic act of directing the mind's recognition powers toward healing and integration. Now, we must speak of loss and grief, for they are inseparable from a long life. The body's recognition systems are ultimately about maintaining integrity and continuity. Loss of loved ones, of physical capacities, of social roles, represents a profound rupture in that continuity. Grief is the psyche's and the body's adaptation to that rupture. It is not a problem to be solved, but a process to be recognized and honored. Neurologically, grief involves rewiring the brain away from the constant expectation of the loved one's presence or the familiar capacity. It is a painful, necessary unlearning. This process is deeply stressful and is often accompanied by inflammation, immune suppression, sleep disruption, and heart strain, literally broken heart syndrome, or Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, is a real condition. To expect the body to maintain perfect balance in the acute throes of grief is unrealistic. The system is, for a time, rightly focused on the monumental task of psychic and emotional reorganization. Supporting the body through grief means providing extreme gentleness, ensuring basic hydration and nutrition, even without appetite, allowing for rest without self-judgment, seeking comforting touch or connection where possible, and understanding that fatigue and fragility are the body's wise insistence on conserving energy for this central, arduous work of recognition and release. Over time, as the mind gradually learns the new reality of absence, the body's systems can slowly recalibrate to a new, different equilibrium. The loss is integrated into the story of the self. It becomes a recognized part of the landscape, still tender, but no longer an open wound. In the quiet space of later life, the relationship with time itself transforms. In youth, time is often recognized as a linear path stretching forward, a resource to be spent on building and achieving. In later decades, the perception often softens into something more cyclical or expansive. There is a recognition of seasons, of rhythms that repeat even as they change. This shift can be profoundly calming to the nervous system. It aligns with the body's own cyclical rhythms, the sleep-wake cycle, the digestive cycle, the seasonal variations in hormone levels and immune function. Embracing a cyclical view of time, rather than a linear one of depletion, can reduce the anxiety of running out. It allows for the recognition of each day as a complete unit, each season with its own purpose, a time for social energy, a time for quiet reflection, a time for puttering in a garden, a time for cozy rest. This is not resignation. It is a sophisticated form of recognition, an understanding that life is not a straight line to a finish, but a series of ever-deepening circles, and that within each circle there can be wholeness. So how do we synthesize all of this into a daily practice of quiet vitality? It is not about a rigid checklist of biohacks, but about cultivating a compassionate awareness that informs small, consistent choices. It is about becoming a gracious host to your own existence. Begin with the morning. Upon waking, instead of jolting into the day's agenda, take even 30 seconds. Feel the weight of your body on the mattress. Notice the quality of the light. Take one deep, slow breath and simply recognize that you have arrived again into a new day. This tiny act sets a tone of presence, not rush. In your movements, practice mindfulness. Whether it's washing dishes, folding laundry, or taking a walk, try to feel the sensations fully. The warmth of the water, the texture of the fabric, the air on your skin, the mechanics of your stride. This is interoceptive and proprioceptive training woven into the fabric of the day. It reinforces the mind-body connection and anchors you in the present, a state the nervous system recognizes as inherently safer than ruminating on past or future. Nourish yourself with intentionality. Eat, when possible, in a calm environment. Look at your food. Appreciate its colors. Chew slowly. This isn't just about digestion. It's about recognizing the act of transformation, of taking the outside world into yourself. It signals to the gut and the brain that this is a peaceful, safe process, optimizing the parasympathetic rest and digest state. In your conversations, practice deep listening. Truly focus on the person speaking, recognizing their humanity beyond the words. This deep social engagement is a powerful cognitive and emotional nutrient, affirming connection and belonging. Curate your sensory inputs. Be aware of the media you consume, the noise levels in your home, the visual clutter in your space. The brain is constantly recognizing and processing this sensory data. A constant stream of alarming news or violent entertainment keeps the threat recognition circuits active. A space of visual calm and natural sounds, birdsong, gentle music, silence, allows those circuits to rest. Create pockets of beauty, a vase of fresh flowers, a pleasing arrangement of stones on a windowsill, a favorite piece of art. Beauty is a direct, wordless signal to the soul of harmony and order, which the body recognizes as well. Most importantly, practice self-talk that is kind and accurate. Notice when you are critical of your body's limitations. Instead of, "My knees are terrible," try, "My knees are asking for more care today." This reframes the recognition from one of failure to one of communication. It fosters a partnership. Thank your body for what it still does effortlessly. The beating of your heart, the drawing of your breath, the blinking of your eyes. This gratitude is a recognition of the million things that still work in flawless concert. In the face of inevitable health challenges, become a curious observer alongside your medical team. Learn about your condition not to instill fear, but to understand the language your body is speaking. Is the inflammation a signal of an overwhelmed system? Is the fatigue a plea for deeper rest? This knowledge allows you to partner with treatments, to ask informed questions, and to advocate for your own need for holistic care that addresses not just the disease, but the person living with it. And finally, consider the concept of legacy not as something grand to be left behind, but as the quiet imprint of your being on the immediate world. The kindness you offer a cashier, the patience you show a child, the story you share with a friend, the way you tend a plant or an animal. These are all acts of recognition. You are recognizing the value in others, in life itself. This outward focus, this generative action, is profoundly health-giving. It gets us out of the small, worried self and into connection with something larger. It provides purpose, and purpose is a powerful organizer of biological systems. It gives the mind and body a compelling reason to maintain balance, to adapt, to endure. As our story draws to a quiet close, let us return to the fundamental truth that has guided us. Your body is, above all, a learning system. It learned to recognize itself in the womb. It learned to tolerate a universe of microbes. It learned to walk, to adapt to foods, to build memories of pathogens, to strengthen bones in response to load, to calm itself in response to gentle breath. It has learned the rhythms of your unique life, your habits, your stresses, your joys, and it continues to learn every single day until your last breath. The changes that come with age are not an end to learning, but its culmination. The system now operates with the deep, sometimes slow, wisdom of accumulated experience. Quiet vitality, then, is the art of cooperating with this innate, lifelong learner. It is choosing, again and again, to provide the conditions for wise learning, the safety of routine, the nourishment of whole foods, the challenge of gentle movement, the restorative power of sleep, the connection of community, and the calming breath of a present mind. It is about shifting from seeing the body as a machine to be controlled, to experiencing it as a wise, ancient, and somewhat mysterious forest that you inhabit. You cannot command every tree and stream within it, but you can learn its pathways, tend its clearings, respect its storms, and appreciate its timeless, quiet beauty. You are both the inhabitant and the steward of this forest. Storms of illness will come, the seasons will change, trees will eventually fall. But the ecosystem as a whole seeks balance. It has redundancies, repair mechanisms, and a deep, abiding will to continue. Your task is not to stop the seasons, but to understand them, to prepare for them, to find shelter and beauty within each one, to listen to the rustling leaves of your senses, to drink from the clear springs of moments of joy, and to rest in the dappled light of acceptance. So, as you go from this listening, back into the gentle flow of your own life, carry this quiet knowing. The greatest health strategy is not a battle against time or decay. It is a long, gentle conversation of recognition. Listen to your body's whispers, so you need not hear its screams. Offer it the familiarity of kindness. Trust in its resilient, ancient ability to adapt. And in that trusting partnership, you'll find a vitality that's not loud or frantic, but deep, resilient, and profoundly quiet. Thank you for sharing this time and this journey into the quiet story of you. If these calm, curious explorations have been a companion to your rest or a moment of peace in your day, and if you'd like to support this channel in reaching other quiet souls in need of calm, you can gently like this video or subscribe to Quiet Vitality. There is no need for anything energetic. A quiet click is enough. It simply helps others find their way to this peaceful space. I am so glad you were here. May you carry this sense of gentle recognition with you. May you sleep deeply, and may you wake with a soft, quiet vitality. Good night.